if I can ask you with this, well, hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Furbabies Summit. We're on day 2. It's Saturday and Catterday for all of us out there. And we are on to our next session with Christina Durst. And it's all going to be about finding purpose and independence through the assistance of service dogs. Now, I had mentioned earlier this morning when we were doing sort of a pre-cap for the day that we were really excited to have them come on to talk about having service dogs and all the things that this can do and how helpful this is.
Right.
So, Christina, I will go ahead and turn this over to you so we can get started.
Thank you. So a little bit of our history is, so we found into the service dog world about 7 years ago. So my husband is a disabled veteran. So we actually found our way in it because he was in need of a service dog. It was kind of his last straw. You know, we had tried, he had gone surgeries, he had medication, he had other stuff. So he was injured while he was in Iraq, and he has neurological PTSD and physical. So it was like a whole array of things that we needed something. And we were kind of at our wits' end. And then we found a service dog program, and we started training his dog. We have a Rottweiler that we trained to be his service dog. And then we just fell in love with it. So we are servers. We like to give back. I mean, he was in the military, so obviously he's big into service. And one of the best things that we found for people, especially with like any type of disability, is taking the focus off of yourself and giving back can really be your saving grace. So we started volunteering with a nonprofit that we trained his dog through originally. And then we really fell into it, and we went to like a dog training vocational school. We started apprenticing under different types of trainers, just trying to absorb as much knowledge as we can in order to become the best trainers for these service dogs. So right now we have our for-profit training, but we mainly focus on our volunteering with Tales of Hope, which is a nonprofit that provides service dogs to veterans, first responders, children of first responders. And I mean, we branch out to the civilian world as well. We never want somebody who needs a service dog to feel like they can't obtain one because they can be expensive to train. On average, if you pay out of pocket for a service dog, it can range anywhere from like $15,000 to $30,000 because it is very intense training. So I like to go off of the ADA definition of a service dog. So a service dog is trained to perform some sort of skill or task for a person with a disability. That can be neurological, that can be mental, that can be physical. The main thing, and an easy way for like the psychological part that I explain to people, because there's ESAs, which ESAs are great, but they're not service dogs, is if you are having some sort of situation, who's doing what to who? Does it make you feel better to do something to your dog, like pet it or something like that? Or is your dog trained to do some sort of task like retrieve medication, alert to your anxiety, go get help, do pressure therapy, something like that? That is what classifies it as a service dog. It can be the same disability, but is the dog doing something to you, or are you doing something to the dog? Is the biggest way to kind of separate them. And service dogs, I mean, they are amazing. They can be trained to do anything for, diabetes, blood pressure, seizure alert, therapy for PTSD or other anxieties. They can even tell like heart rates. There's so much that a dog can be trained to do. And then, so Tales of Hope has a sister nonprofit called Coco's Cupboard that is a rescue. So a lot of the dogs that we're training are actually rescue dogs that we have temperament tested and tested like their capability to work, because not all dogs want to work. Some dogs just want to hang out on the couch and eat potato chips and everything like that. So to test their working ability. And then if they pass all the assessments in the Coco's Cupboard program, then they will actually be transferred over to the Tales of Hope program and be adopted out to become a service dog for somebody.
I'm putting that in the chat, the Coco's Cupboard. That is so sweet.
Yes.
So can you tell us for those, I'm a little familiar with some of the different some of the different things that service dogs can help with and alert for, but can you share some of those things, like with the diabetes, like with the seizures? Like, how does that look for somebody who does not know, who's never been exposed to this before? What does that look like with the dog and with their person? Like, what?
So it can really, so when we are training, every dog looks different. It's really on what that person needs for that skill set. So for diabetes specifically, that's a lot of scent training. So we're actually scent training the dog to the person's highs and lows. An easy way to explain it to somebody who doesn't have, any type of service dog background is just knowing, like, when you are very like anxious or anxiety driven, your sweat smells different. Everybody can tell that. But dogs' noses are so much more sensitive than ours, so they can tell like when there's a change in like the way that you smell. So we will do a lot of scent training where we will have somebody, when they're having a high or a low, we'll have them put a piece of gauze in their mouth in order to retain that smell, or use their socks, because your feet are one of the main things that sweat. And we'll have them put them in a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer. And when they're healthy and they feel good enough to train, then we will have them pull that scent out in order to work with that dog, in order to get them to start alerting. And like I said, it can look different for everybody. Some people want their dog to nudge them with their nose. Some people want their dogs to kind of paw them. Or some dogs will like sit and like not move at all. So it's really on what the person wants that to look like for them, because these are dogs that are going to be going into public with them. So we want them to react in a way that's going to be beneficial for the handler. Some people don't like all the attention, so having a dog like jump on them or something like that just brings too much attention. While if the dog just kind of sits, then they're like, okay, well, I need to kind of check myself. And that's also one of the biggest reasons why we really advocate for people not to interact with somebody with a service dog. So one of the biggest things that we tell people is, like, a service dog is classified as medical equipment legally. So that'd be like coming up to somebody and being like, can I pet your wheelchair? Yeah.
Can I cuddle your oxygen tank? No.
Yes.
Back off.
And especially for a dog that is sight trained. So what people typically give off of some sort of tell. Like for most men, if they are getting really anxious, they'll bounce their legs, they'll kind of pace or something like that. Well, that is a physical tell that we want that dog to monitor. Or if it's scent trained and they're really honed in onto the person's heart rate, blood pressure, scent, or diabetes, then we really need that dog to be able to focus on their handler, because it could change like that. And that it could be, life-threatening to a person who is relying on this dog to alert to them when they're having highs and lows or an elevated heart rate or something like that. And, but instead they're being distracted by somebody in public. So one of the biggest things that I always tell people is, like, I'm not a big fan of the leave it command, because it gets a little overused sometimes, where people are like, leave it, leave it, leave it. But sometimes if I'm in public and I like see somebody looking at me, like they're going to come up to me and talk to me about my dog, I'll tell the dog to leave it very loudly in hopes that the person will hear it.
I love that.
Yeah. So that's
it works.
It does work. Yes.
And they wear the vests too, right?
Yes.
The harness vest?
So ADA doesn't require them to. However, we always tell all of our clients and all of everybody, it's better if they do, because your dogs also know when they're wearing the vest. So we have 2 fully trained service dogs in our house and a in training service dog. And they know as soon as we pull out that vest, it is work time, and they get serious. Every other time, I mean, they're frolicking in the backyard. I mean, they're dogs. We allow them to play, everything like that. But you pull out their vest and they get serious. And they really, like, their focus completely changes. Where at the house, they're with, their pack, their people, the other dogs and everything like that. But when they put their vest on, they're really honed in on their handler. And then it also allows the public to know that this is a service dog. One, to hopefully keep people from interfering in the dog's work. And also, it just allows like business owners and stuff like that to know that it's a service dog and you're not just trying to walk in with a pet. So it kind of alleviates some of that as well.
It makes it a lot less confrontational or a lot less questionable. I know here in Austin, we're a dog friendly city, but there's so many other spots where they're like, no, you can't do that. But when it's like you said, when they have the vest on, you know what they're there for. And they have a job to do.
Right.
So service dogs and the dogs at the airport, you're looking at them going, I really want to pet you, but no, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah.
Walk away.
Yeah, even somebody who trains service dogs, when I see a dog in public, I'm like, oh my God, I love you. But I just try not to have that eye contact. I try not to interfere because it is, especially for somebody like my husband, who he has physical and neurological disabilities. But if he's fully dressed, you don't see his scars. You don't see everything that's going on. So now he's walking around with a service dog. And so it's like a physical expression that there's something different about you. And unfortunately nowadays, especially with like social media and everything like that, people feel like they're privy to your details. So we really like work on like trying to educate the public on, this is a medical device and, so we really work with our clients on like how to deal with that interaction because that is a huge hurdle that the handlers have to work through, is just now they have like this physical representation that they have a disability.
How long, we have a really good question. How long on average does it take to train one of the service dogs?
So we start out with heavy obedience. So it really is dependent on the dog. It can be like 6 months to a year. So we first start out with a lot of like heavy obedience because you can't task train a dog if it won't listen. And then we work with like distraction training and confidence building and everything like that. And then we work with the person specifically on their disability on what those tasks need to be. So for my husband specifically, his dog is trained for pressure therapy, for mobility to pull him up and down stairs, a lot of retrieval because with his back injury and neurological issues, it's hard for him to bend over. And then he, for pulling and stuff like that. So it's really dependent on the dog. Our dog, our Rottweiler, his name is Zeus. Everybody thinks that he's like the golden child. But he took like 6 months just to teach him to retrieve something and bring it. Now I can get him to pick up a credit card off the ground. So it's like once it snapped like that, he figured it out. But it's really dependent on the dog. So the way that we do it with the Tales of Hope program is we do it in waves. So that's not so overwhelming for people. So we started with waves where we do obedience and we work them through the AKC Canine Good Citizen. And then once we get that, then we work them through like public access training. So being able to take your dog out into public and everything like that, and having your dog still be obedient and stuff like that. And then we really hone in once we get to that part where we know that the dog has has passed the Canine Good Citizen. So that's showing that they're obedient and well-tempered, and then they can handle the public access part. Then we will start with their specific task training. And throughout that, we have like basic tasks that we teach every dog. So that's teaching the dogs to brace, which is assisting pretty much being a platform to help person move around, or we teach the dog to lead and follow. And these are like the starter ones that can be really transitioned to a lot of stuff. So lead and follow helps with like my husband can't do like crowds and stuff like that. So his dog is trained to find exits. So lead is really a good thing because it allows the dog to walk out in front of you. Like it's a command that lets the dog know that it can pull. And then he pulls him to an exit to kind of help him facilitate stuff like that. And then we really teach the dog how to touch things, because that's the basis for getting the dog to retrieve stuff, to alert to people on certain things that are going on, whether or not that's with their nose or with their paw. or to do stuff like open handicap doors or open the refrigerator or fetch a bottle of water.
Have you had, are there particular breeds of dog or types of dog that are more suited to particular tasks?
So we really work with hounds we found are pretty difficult. And that's just because they can be overstimulated by the senses. Mm-hmm. We really focus on temperaments and not necessarily breeds. My husband and I are big into understanding breeds and what they were originally used for, so that we can kind of hone those like internal, like those instinctual skills that they have. Mm-hmm. But really we focus on the temperament of the dog and what the people need. So anytime a new person comes into the program, we first sit down with them and we have, the hard talk of like, what do you need the dog for? Because it's a hard conversation. Nobody likes to talk about the illnesses or injuries that are kind of making life, more restricted for them. So we talk about that. We talk about their home life. Is there kids in the house? Is there other dogs in the house? Are they active or are they more sedentary? And then what skills or tasks do they want the dog trained to do? And once we kind of get all that information, then we can go through our portfolio of dogs that we have available and be like, okay, well, this person is really active. They don't have kids and stuff like that. So they can do, a more high energy shepherd. This person they're a little bit fearful of dogs, but they would benefit from the assistance of a service dog. And we have, a good goofy doodle. So we really pay attention to like what the person needs, and then we focus on the temperament. And that's the good part about having a sister nonprofit with the Cocos, is that the dogs that we're placing them with, we know a good history on them. So the dogs will go into like a foster home, and we can kind of figure out their like temperaments, their skill set, like where we would really like to hone them in. And that allows us to help place them with the right person. So we work on like eye contact. We will take them out in public, kind of see like where they are, and make sure, again, like they want to work. Because if they don't want to work, then they'll be a great family pet because they've already gone through some obedience training, and it kind of helps the person get ahead. But we really try to pay attention to the dog's temperament and what's going to work with the person. And we also tell people that when they come, we make them have what we call mini dates, where we'll bring a group of dogs, because we try not to choose the dog for the person, because this is going to be their battle buddy. This is going to be their companion. It's going to be their lifesaver. So we want them to be happy with the dog that they have. So what we'll do is, if we know somebody is coming to meet dogs, then we will have them come out and we'll do a meet and greet, and we'll make them have mini dates. And that's where they have to go and walk and interact with at least 3 different dogs. And they kind of take the dog, they walk off to themselves, and we really watch them to see how the dog is interacting with them, how the person is interacting with the dog. Is the dog more interested in the person, or is the dog still interested in too many, all the other stimulants going around? And just really pay attention to what the person and the dog is interacting together. And we also tell them that this is your minivan that's driving you cross country. This is not your sports car. So we want to pay attention that this is a lifelong companion that is going to really be your saving grace. So, we love that you raised shepherds growing up, but now you are a more sedentary lifestyle, and maybe a shepherd's not going to be the best option for you. So we really like sit down and have those conversations with them to make sure that we're pairing them up. And with the Tales of Hope program, you're kind of like lifelong family. We tell people, you're in the family now. So if they get a dog and they start training the dog and it's just not working, then we'll try something else. Mm-hmm. Nothing is kind of like, this is your dog, you're stuck with it. We kind of work with them and try to figure out what's going to work best for them.
I was going to ask if you'd ever had any dogs that did not work out with their person, and if they came back and how you guys handle that if you were able to start work with another dog or to figure something else out, like you just said.
Right.
So that's awesome.
Yeah, so we'll have them come and we'll typically try to assign them. Our classes are normally like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday type situation. So we'll try to assign them the dog on Friday to where they're interacting with us throughout the day, throughout the weekend, so that we can kind of watch them and be like, I don't know if this is a good fit. Like we notice it more so because we do a lot of autistic children, that like the dog will be fine with a more mature adult, but then once you put it with a child, now all of a sudden the energies are, ramping up instead of calming down. So we just tell them, we'll figure it out, and our biggest saying is trust the process. It's a long process and it can be overwhelming. And the good thing is that majority of our volunteers that we have, that coach, are previous people who have been through the program. So once we're big into like building each other up. So once you've been through so many classes and your dog is up to a certain caliber, we're like, okay, well, why don't you help these new people? Because the new people are like, I'm never going to get through this. Like, this is so much. I don't see the end of the tunnel. Like, I don't know how this is ever going to work. So we really utilize our experienced people who have been through the program to be able to let them know it's okay, to let them know it's okay to be frustrated, that we're going to work through this. But the biggest thing that we always tell them too is what goes down the leash comes back up the leash. So if you're frustrated, if you are anxious, if you are whatever, and you are putting that energy down the leash, that's what you're going to get back from the dog. So we tell them to shake it out, to breathe it out, to take a little walk if they need to, and kind of refocus, because that energy is going down. And we want to kind of make sure that we are trying to set everybody up, the person and the dog, for success.
That's something, I'm glad you said that. That's something that we've touched on several times now over the last day and a half now. Whatever we put out there as humans, as their people, our animals pick up and reflect it back to us. So like you said, if we're stressed out or anxious, they become stressed out or anxious.
Right.
And trying to reduce that stress in us and trying to reduce the stress in their environment, it helps, it sets them up for success, and it helps them be more confident and lets them be more of who they really are, rather than, because when they're stressed, it's like having a different animal. So, and
we always tell people, if there's tension on the leash, you're causing tension to the dog. And so the dogs are naturally going to be, so when you do any type of correction or anything like that, if you're using like a collar, you're letting the dog know that there's some sort of command, that there's something that they're supposed to be doing afterwards. So when you have constant pressure on that leash, you're letting the dog know, I'm supposed to be doing something, but there's nothing for them to be doing. So instead, what they're doing is they're scanning around. They're like, okay, there's a danger somewhere. And that's how a lot of reactivity starts, is just because that tension is always on the leash. So the dogs are always kind of on edge of, what do I need to do? And they're going to figure it out.
And if we can reduce that, it's a lot easier.
Yes. So we always look at people and we're like, loose leash, shake it out. So
do some wiggles.
Yes.
Something. Deep breathing wiggles. How long on, and I know it's a challenging question to answer, but on average, across all the pairs that you guys have put together, about how long do you see it taking for the dog and the human, to their person, to bond together?
So we tell people for the first couple of weeks, the first couple of months, the person needs to do everything for that dog, especially when you're taking it into a household that there is a significant other, or there's a child or something like that. That person needs to be that dog's like lifeline. Feed it, take it potty, do everything like that. And then we really work a lot on eye contact. I've seen it to where, it can take 3 days and the dog is all about it. Because so we foster a lot of the service dogs. So they'll come to my house and they'll stay with me for months. And I will work with them on public access, and I'll start some of the basic task training that pretty much anybody can utilize. And I'm always worried because anytime you give a dog a very structured and a very like safe household, they can become attached to you. So anytime I place the dog, I stay very distant and everything like that because I don't want the dog watching me. And we did a Great Dane. He was beautiful and I loved him. But he was 145 pounds at a year old, and I already have 2 Rottweilers. So I was like, that's a whole lot of dog in my house. But I placed him, and he fell in love with his new handler within like 2 days. Like I never even existed, which is great because it's the training, and we do a lot of confidence building. So we'll do agility and stuff like that with the dog and with the handler. So that they kind of transition that bond to them. And then we do a lot of train the trainer. So when the dog's in a foster situation, we will do some training, and we do like airport trips where we'll take the dogs out to the airport and go through TSA and actually board a Delta airplane to kind of prepare people. And then, we try to set up everybody for full success, but when you're doing this type of intense training with a dog, it's pretty quick that bond happens because you're now that structure, you're now that safety, you're now that leader of the pack that's letting the dog know what needs to happen when. So the bond typically happens pretty quickly.
That's awesome. And it kind of makes, I think you would feel happy when you go in and they, you back off and they respond to the new person. And you're like, okay, I did my job. Awesome.
Yeah. You kind of watch them whenever because you want to make sure that the interaction's well, because even though it's a foster, they become your baby and everything like that. But then seeing the interaction between and knowing that the dog has a purpose really like helps the transition whenever the dogs leave your home. But he is now lifeline for somebody else, and she sends me pictures all the time of the 2 of them doing shenanigans. So
do they share those other stories of after they leave you guys and they're with their person? Do they share those on social or?
Right. So we have our public Facebook page, but then we also have a private that's for all of our previous clients that came through and a lot of the trainers. And it's a private page that all of our previous clients can go on there. And we can talk about training. We can talk about, today was a hard day, just in life, not even about dog training. Or we can talk about, I went to the airport today and it was amazing. And here's all the pictures. So we tell people that like this, once you're with Tales of Hope, it's like a lifelong thing. So if anybody has any problems with public access, with housing, getting a job with their service dog or anything like that, we're always there to help because we have that experience. And then I always tell people, because with a service dog, the service dog doesn't have to be formally trained. You can train your own service dog as long as you have a disability classified under the ADA. So, either a neurological, mental, or physical illness that affects a significant part of your daily living. You can train your own service dog. We recommend that you work with a trainer just because a trainer is going to have more knowledge of the laws. They're going to have more knowledge of how to successfully do some of the training without negatively affecting your bond.
Is there anything that you've run into that has been like a really big obstacle for any of the pairs, or?
The biggest thing that I think we're big into, public access and everything like that. The biggest thing is just educating the public. And we tell people, if you're comfortable dealing with it, then do. But it's mainly the public just not being educated on service dogs, because in some places they're very common. And in some places people are like, why do you have your dog in here? And then also service dogs that aren't trained or, fake service dogs. And I actually work with some businesses and stores and stuff like that on letting them know their rights as well. Because we're big, like, well, me personally, I'm big on both sides. I'm big on a service dog is great. And it, like they can be your life. I've seen it with my own husband. I mean, before he had his service dog, he walked with a cane and everything like that. And then he kind of transitioned to where he was more mobile because he was able to be more active with his service dog. So I've seen how it can be the saving grace, but I've also seen from training dogs and from having our dog out in public, the negative effect it has on fully trained service dog when somebody brings their pet into public and then tries to say that it is a service dog.
I feel you there.
Yeah.
We have a very dear friend. Has a little boy, and that they have two Great Danes. So when you said 145, yes, they're huge. That's a lot of dog in the house.
Right. Yeah.
But they're precious. But those two dogs have been just so instrumental in helping him because he has seizures and he will go ataxic just completely like that. And so those dogs have helped to hold him up, and they've helped to alert, and they're so good at it, and they go out with them, but it is hard. And I agree with you. I see that on both sides. It's like you want the service dogs to be able to function and do their job and be out there and not be bothered or even discriminated against. And then you have the other dogs out there that it's like, oh, I just wanted to bring my dog for coffee, so they're a service dog. No, they're not. Don't you messed that up for everybody else that really needs it.
Yeah.
So it's
and then
like
we
that
also
with the public. Don't do that.
Yeah. And we also warn people against going online and buying those certificates.
Yes, thank you.
So under the ADA, it's just, under the ADA, you have to have a disability, first and foremost, to have a service dog. And then your service dog has to be trained to do tasks in order to alleviate your disability. But there's no federal registry or anything like that. So when you go online and they're like, okay, let me register my service dog and pay $100 for a piece of paper, you're giving that money to a privatized company that actually has no legality.
Yeah.
So we always warn people against that. Now, us personally, we have little cards that, have the picture of our handler and of our dog, and it has the ADA laws on the back of it, and it just says service dog. But that's also something that will hang off of the dog's collar or something like that. If it's too hot for them to wear a vest, we'll have them wear a service dog collar, and then we'll have the tag still displaying that they are a service dog. But we always warn people against those, let me register my service dog, because it doesn't actually mean anything. The biggest thing is that you have a disability and that your dog is trained.
Would you say, or can I ask you about how many service dogs have you guys placed since you started Tales of Hope?
So it's hard to tell because
I was gonna say that might be hard, but
we've worked with Coco's for a while, and then Coco started its nonprofit because they just saw the need in the community for the nonprofit side of it. Since I'm trying to think, what is it? Since 2015, when my husband and I moved back to Georgia, I mean, we've worked with 300, 400, 500 teams because we personally will work with people individually, but also with Tales of Hope, we have group classes, which it helps because it creates like a whole network for people to have support. And then we kind of break them up based off of where they are with their training, so that they can focus on what they need to do. And it's also not such a big group. But we've easily done 300 pairs with all the service dogs. So the greatest part is just seeing seeing them when they first get the dog, because we've been working with Suzanne, the person who started and founded Coco's and Tales of Hope. We've been working with her since 2015. So it's great to see the people who were placed, a year ago, and then how far they've come with their dog now, because we keep up with them. We have all of our clients do logs.
Mhm.
So we can keep track that they're actively utilizing their service dog and they're following through with their training. And we also have them not only put like the positive stuff, but negative stuff,
Mhm.
so that we can keep an eye on, like, all of a sudden now my dog is barking at people wearing hats. So that we can make sure that we address these and try to figure out why and make sure that it doesn't happen in the future. But we really, it's great. And then seeing those people who have gone through the full training and now they are volunteering and they are helping train with other new people.
We were going to ask about your training program and then your volunteers coming back. Can I also, with your dogs, so they start when they're young,
Mm-hmm.
and then when they get to be, 5, 6, 8 years old, if something happens and God forbid, we have cancer or something else and they pass on, is their human, are they able to come back and
Mm-hmm.
pair again with you
Right.
guys, or
So
because that's
we've had
devastating.
some that either the dog had an unforeseen illness, or like it started showing signs of like hip dysplasia or something like that. So it's just time for the dog to retire.
Mhm.
Once the dog starts showing signs, then we'll start working with them to train a new dog to replace it, while hopefully we have enough notice that the other dog is still active. Because not only does that help the person not feel like they're starting all over, like from square
Mhm.
one after some sort of tragedy, but the dogs will also learn from each other. So this new dog coming in can kind of pick up some of the skills naturally from watching the other dog. I don't know if you've ever had to potty train a puppy. When you have a fully potty trained dog in the house, it's much
Yes,
easier than just
it's
having
much
just the
easier.
dog in the house. Um, so we, anytime we can work with
Mm.
that, but it's, once you're with the program, you're with the program. And if something unforeseen happens, and it's even so much that, if you're going, on a cruise or something like that, or you end up in the hospital and you can't have your dog with you, like we have volunteers and stuff like that that will like take care of the dog while you're kind of indisposed. So yeah.
I love that. I love
Yeah.
that.
So you're never alone.
I can tell you, since he had the surgery, so that was one of the things that we used to try to figure out, were patients that had dogs and they needed care for them.
Mhm.
It's like, okay, who can we reach out to try to help take care? Because there's weight restrictions, there's lifting, bending. You can't do
Right.
those things for a long period of time, and
Right.
and that's so
Yeah.
I think it's really cool that you guys have that built
And
in.
then if the person can care for the dog, as long as they're not like in an ICU or like a sterile environment, then the
Yeah.
dog can actually go to the hospital with them, being a service dog. But for situations where they can't care for the dog, or they're kind of stuck inside because they're under some sort of quarantine or something like that, then we'll work to make sure that the dog's taken care of. So.
That is really good. Is there anything else, before we wrap up? We're getting close to our time, unfortunately. These have been so fun today. I think you guys are awesome. We're about to have a visitor.
I know my Rottweiler's down here snoring at my feet. So
my little one's been sitting on the ledge. I'm like, oh, no, he's here. Is there something, if there's anybody out there listening right now or that listens to the replays and they are in a similar situation and they feel like they would really benefit from having a service dog, but they're just afraid to get started or afraid to reach out, or like you said, like it really can feel overwhelming. Do you have any word of advice or any other resources where you might say, go check this out or go look here? Because I know you guys are in Georgia.
Right.
And you've got a good reach. But maybe if they're just out of range and they just weren't sure where to get started, what would you tell them?
So there is a lot of nonprofits that you can reach out to. So if never let the monetary part scare you, because there are nonprofits out there all over the United States that will help military, first responders, and civilians all alike. And then if you decide to go with a private trainer, just really ask them about their experience with service dog training, because service dog training is more than just obedience skills. You really want to work with somebody who knows about task training and stuff like that. At the very least, find a trainer that knows how to do trick training, because that can be transitioned over to task training. A lot of the same skill sets helps for that. And then the ADA website is like a great website just for knowing the laws, and then just take it slow. So if you do start working with a trainer and you're a little overwhelmed, find out what your pet friendly stores are in your area. And just, when you're working with the trainer, take them, like I know around us, Michael's, the hobby store near us, is pet friendly. Academy, the sports store, is pet friendly. So that's all stores that you can go into with your animal that isn't too overstimulating, like a Tractor Supply or a pet store or something like that. That would be too distracting for the dog. But those are good places to go in and kind of start seeing how you would feel. Because that's the biggest thing that I always tell people who are interested in getting a service dog is really like make sure that it's going to be something that's going to benefit you, especially if you're going to get it for either a neurological issue or like a mental health issue, is make sure that it's not going to put too much stress on you. And then take it slowly. And if you feel like you've gotten to like a stop sign with your dog, take a couple of steps backwards and kind of get a success, like get a win, and then start working your way forward. It's not something that's going to happen overnight, but it's something that if you put in the work, it will be your saving grace. And just to kind of breathe it out and trust it. And then once you get into the part where you are task training and everything like that, just pay attention to your dog, because one day you're going to be doing all this training and it's just going to snap with the dog, and the dog's just going to start understanding it. And then at that point, you have to start trusting the dog. At all this other part, you're trusting yourself, you're trusting your trainer. But at some point, you have to put that trust in your dog and be able to listen to it, because your dog may be, doing an alert to you, but you're so like in tune with the training process that you're not paying attention to, like, oh, my dog is doing it. Like my dog, I need to sit down for a minute because my sugars are crazy, or, my heart rate's elevated, or, I'm about to have a seizure, and really pay attention to that. And then also before you even start, before you start doing the training, do kind of a self-check and figure out, what are my triggers? Am I somebody who covers up my face? Am I somebody who, like whenever my heart rate elevates, am I somebody who starts sweating or kind of getting lightheaded? Like, what are your tells? Because that is going to be a huge benefit for your trainer in order to help train this dog in order to assist you.
Those are wonderful, wonderful tips. Thank you.
No problem.
I think our second to last,
what
it's
does it
too
say?
bad. He says it's too bad you can't teach your dogs how to play poker and tell others tells.
Right. Yeah.
This is true.
Well, it's funny though, because like another point to hit is like my husband's Rottweiler. So when my husband starts dancing around, he will kind of paw his leg. And then we also volunteer a lot in the nonprofit veteran community. So we were around another veteran that had that same kind of energy and that same kind of tail. And Zeus turned around. He was standing right next to my husband's dog. He turned around and like smacked his leg, and he was like, "Your dog just hit me." And we're like, "Are you okay?" And then he was like, "Yeah, it's a lot right now. I'm kind of dancing around." And we're like, "Come on, breathe." And then we talked to him about getting a service dog, because obviously he has a poker tail that our dog was able to call out.
You'll have to share a picture of Zeus in the group so we can see.
I definitely will. He's our troublemaker. Everybody thinks he's the greatest thing ever, but we're like, he is great, but he's ours. So we're like,
he's your baby. So what is your biggest need?
So our biggest need is we just purchased an old abandoned elementary school. So we are in the middle of rebuilding it in order to be a kennel for Coco's cupboard and to be a training facility for Tales of Hope. So we're going to be building like a full apartment complex in there, to be able to do mock training. We're going to do it in phases. We're eventually going to have a spot that people can like set up bunks if they come in from out of state. Because we're not just Georgia. We open up to whoever can get to us. We open up to. but on the Tales of Hope link, there's a page to donate. And then there's, if you're local to the Georgia area, I mean, we always need people to show up and scrape the old paint off the wall. And then I know right now we're having people donate primer so that we can repaint it once we get it. But yeah, just if you're local to Georgia, I mean, we're going to be building agility equipment and everything like that. So whatever we tell people, whatever you can do helps.
That is astounding. I am so proud for you. I'm so excited for you. Oh my gosh. How old is the elementary school, if I can ask?
Yeah, well, it's out in the middle of nowhere in Gay, Georgia.
Okay.
So it's probably, I don't even know how old it is. I know that whenever we went scraping, we had to be careful with some stuff, but it's going to be amazing because it's a small elementary school, and we'll be able to have Coco's there with the dogs, and Coco's also does cats, and then it's also a food pantry for people. And then so if somebody feels like they can't feed their dog or anything like that, then there's Coco's. Then they can reach out to them and make sure we're an all around. Whatever you need, we have you. And then with Tales of Hope, we'll be able to do a lot of the training. So
I think that is phenomenal. I'm like, we need to make a road trip.
Right.
It's 13 hours. It's not that bad. Not really.
Yeah, we used to live in Dallas, Texas, and it was 11 hours for us.
Yeah, so 5 hours is just getting to the Texas border. So the state line and boop, and then after that it's state. Oh, look, we're in Georgia.
Yeah.
I have family back in Georgia, so I've made that trip several times.
Oh, okay.
So I say 13 hours without stopping, except for gas and when you have to run to the restroom. But beyond that, So I'm really proud for you guys. Gosh, we could do a whole other session on the back end of Coco's end, and we'll have to do that. So we will, Scott asked the best way for our listeners to connect with you. We've got your website, and you said you guys are on Facebook too?
Yeah, so Tales of Hope is on Facebook, and so and then there's a website for Tales of Hope and for Coco's.
Okay. Are y'all on Instagram at all?
I believe so. I don't really manage I'm more so deal with the dog side than the social media side. So I barely deal with my own social media, much less anybody else's. So.
Well, we'll look for that. We've got a speaker that's coming on tomorrow that she makes doing Instagram look like a snap of the fingers of breeze. She makes it so much easier. And we'll look for that then. But I feel you. He's much better at that than I am.
Yeah, I did a social media marketing class in college, and that's the only reason why I have a TikTok is because I had to.
Well, Christina, thank you so much for coming on today. And tell Robert we're praying for him to get better and heal up with perfect heal. And thank him for his service for us. And just thank you for everything you guys are doing. I mean, this is just phenomenal. It's really phenomenal.
We're here if anybody needs anybody, and we're always here for like resources if anybody just needs, information on service dogs or anything like that. And then you guys have my the email directly to me. So if anybody needs anything, they can always ask me.
We'll put that in our group too, so people can reach out to you guys as well. Yep. So that's thank you so much. Problem. Oh my gosh. Well, I think that's what we have for right now. We're just a little bit over time, but we're headed into a break, unless I'm missing something. So we are. Yes, thank you, Nina. Thank you for the info on service dogs, and thank you to your hubby. Yes. So we will take a break. We will come back at 2:30, and we will be here with our next speaker.